Hopefully everyone can see this well. So first, before we talk about this, we gotta mention what personality even is, because this is technically a personality test. And when we think about personality, the reason I picked this photo is because I think of it as a lens. It's really how we're seeing the world, how we're taking in information, and that's going both ways as we live. It's how we think, it's how we feel, it's how we behave, and there's a pattern to that, and that's how we're able to come up with personality tests, and there's all these different things out there because of that pattern. Personality is inescapable. You might think somebody, is like no personality, but that's a personality, that they have no personality. Does that make sense? Like, that's still a part of who they are. It's still their pattern, that there may be a bump on a log or something like that. But everybody's got a personality. Can't escape it. So, and then the other thing that's important about personality is that it's a mix. So some people, we always hear that about nature, nurture. Are you born with it? Or is it from how you were raised? I would think most people that study personality would say it comes from both. We are shaped by the experiences we go through, but I also know there's a huge genetic component to it. Think of you who are parents. Think of your kids. Did you have any babies when they were just kind of colicky and needed a lot of attention, even when they were little, versus babies that were just happy to be in the world, those are things that you didn't do anything. You might think you were just a perfect parent. That's why you had a nice, pleasant baby that just, takes the world. But no, they just came out that way. And you're lucky, because I didn't have any of those. I had the kids. But those babies, if you notice, most people would say, yeah, that stayed with them. The ones that were kind of high intensity or needed a lot, they tend to continue to need that. And the ones that are just chill, usually are still just chill when they're older. So that lets you know there's something that you come out into the world with, and then that gets shaped. So that's really what personality is in general. So when we talk about the Enneagram, or why we're even studying this, I think this is important to study for these reasons. One, the more we understand, the more we can grow, both personally and spiritually. The Enneagram specifically, it reveals who we are. And then, what I love about this one is then who you can become. So it's hard to make changes when we don't understand ourselves, when we don't have an understanding of our personality mechanisms and things like that. Once we understand, then we have a choice. Okay, now I get it. Now I can either act this way or this way. So that's why there's growth in this. It affects everything from it. Once you understand yourself, and you can change, but you also have greater compassion for those around you, because then you realize, oh, we're different. And this is how they're, remember, glasses, seeing the world. This is how they're interacting with the world. This is why they're doing what they do. Now that I understand that, I have compassion for you because I have more understanding. We won't go into it a lot today, but within the Enneagram itself, there's a framework of even understanding how we deal with conflict. Are we positive? Are we worried about reacting? Do we just react to conflict? All of those things. Once again, if you understand it, if you're a positive person that's just like, what problem? And then you're living with somebody that's a reaction, the world is falling, you guys are constantly going to be like, why is she freaking out about this? And why is he ignoring this? Well, it's personality. So if we understand that, we can move through that. And then I would say the chief reason is for balance. The whole idea for all of us human beings is to kind of find balance as we live our lives. And specifically, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm a Christian, and my faith tells me that part of being Christ-like and part of living my life is this idea of being made whole. And that word, what's interesting about that word in the Bible, we often talk about peace. And there's a Greek word, it's eirene, and that's the word for peace. It's used all over the New Testament. You know what peace, that word eirene means, is to make whole. That's where the whole idea of peace comes from, is joining together to make whole. When we understand ourselves and all these facets of our personality and we grow, guess what we do? We become more whole and we understand more and we have more peace. So that's the other big reason. Now, since I mentioned my faith in Christianity, I will say that some people go in churches specifically, like, oh, I'm so scared you're using this word Enneagram. I want you to know that this is a wisdom tool. It's a spiritual wisdom tool. It helps me with my faith, but not everybody that studies Enneagram is a Christian. It doesn't explicitly talk about Christ in it or anything like that. But I will tell you this. If the fear is it's not in the Bible, we shouldn't do it, I want to remind you of some other things that aren't in the Bible. There's nowhere that talks about exercise in the Bible. Nowhere. Did you ever read a passage that was like, but we value exercise. We know it's good for us. Our doctors tell us to do it. It's okay. Like, just because it wasn't in there doesn't mean we can't use it to be better people. Does that make sense? The other thing I remember thinking this morning is I don't remember ever hearing about school. Yes, we know Jesus was in the temple, but there was nothing about school. Do we value education in school? Yeah, we don't go, oh no, we can't learn in those ways. And so there's just because it's not there doesn't mean that we can't utilize it to become better or let God use it to help us be better people. Okay, so that's enough about that. Now, look at this fun graphic. Can you guys see this? I love finding fun pictures on the internet. This is called cigarette psychology, and it was like an ad in a magazine about if you can tell your personality by how you hold your cigarette. I love it. I should have found the answers, but are you a manly man and hold it like this? Or are you, I don't know. I don't know what the answers are. But what I love about it is that we as humans are always trying to figure out, does that mean something? Is it because you're doing that? Does that mean something about you? So personality and trying to find patterns has been around forever. And so what makes this one different? So a lot of you guys, if you're even here, it's probably because you've been interested or done other personality things in the test, or you're the person on Facebook when it says, what Disney character are you? You're like, yeah, I'm going to figure that one out. This is fun. Because it is fun. But the ones out there that are studied a lot, you might have heard of Myers-Briggs. The DISC is used a lot. The 4 colors or true colors. There's one called 16PF, Kiersey. There's an animal one. Are you an otter? There's so many different personality tests, and they do overlap a lot because personalities are personalities. Why I love Myers. When I was in college, Myers-Briggs was my jam. I really enjoyed it. I liked it. Here's why I've left that behind. It was interesting. There was no growth in there. It was just a matter of, this is who you are. Here you are. You're in a box. This is, let's see, you're an otter or whatever, or you're gold or you're whatever. Those are all fun, but to me, life isn't just about, we don't want to just be in a box and say this is who we are. The idea is growth. The idea is to make change, become better people. And so the Enneagram is what it's not an excuse for bad behavior. It is not this is who I am, and so therefore that you guys all have to put up with me because I'm a number, whatever that is. No, it's meant for growth. It's an embarkation point. It's where we leave. It's not your destination. And so you'll notice why it's so different than all these other tests. It's also, I'll just say I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the history of it, but it's a pretty ancient tool. There's evidence of this idea of these 9 personalities back in the 300s and 400s within the Sufis, which is a off branch in the kind of Persia area. And so it has been around. Whereas the most modern personality test, the first one that was actually documented, you guys might remember this from history, is the ones that like phlegmatic. There's 4 ways that your face looks. Like this. I don't know. There's 4 names. It was in the 17 or 1800s where they could try to tell your personality by your wrinkles and how your face looks. So that's the most modern versus this thousands of years old. So this is really what it is. I want you to see this. It's on. We will refer to this a lot. I wanted this right front and center just so you can see it. This is my own creation. It's confusing because it's so complex. But when you just kind of strip it down, that symbol right there is what we call the Enneagram. And Ennea means 9 in Latin, because there's 9, and gram is just a shape. So it's a 9-pointed shape. We've already mentioned that it's ancient, that it's a spiritual wisdom tool. It's also what it's, these are all the things that people say it is. It is an impressive party trick. Those of you who have been in environments with me know that I can't help but just zing into an Enneagram conversation and like to type people at parties. But in its kind of counseling framework, it was within the Catholic Church. The spiritual directors in the Catholic Church had studied the Enneagram and knew it, and then they used it in counseling without using the word Enneagram. So people would come into them for counseling or spiritual direction, and you begin to just kind of pick up these patterns, and the director would know, oh, this is a 5 or this is a 7 or an 8. And so their questions would be pointed. Do you feel this? Is this how you think? And that person would go, oh, how do you know my brain? It's like you're figuring me out. It's not that hard to do once you kind of know the Enneagram. But that's so if you're here to do that, to impress your friends, you can do that. And it is also probably a disservice right now is that it's very popular. It's kind of a fad. And a lot of the people that teach Enneagram are a little, like there's that mixed sword, like we're glad people are talking about it and it's not so weird. But we're also kind of sad because people are kind of hijacking it for their own benefit and maybe doing some disservice to it because of how helpful it can be. And so just FYI on that. Okay, let's do the basics of the Enneagram. So this is what we're going to do. We're just a few basics. We're going to talk about the centers of intelligence, and then we're going to just go through the numbers. And you're going to find yourself in those numbers. But here's the things you got to know. First, I always have to talk about the pictures. I don't know if you can see this very well, but this was done again in like the 1800s in France. It was published in a Paris magazine, and the top it says "In l'an 2000." It's like in the year 2000. This is what they were picturing our education system would be like in the year 2000 school. Isn't that funny? Putting the books in and like somehow getting the information into your head. Some truth to how we, not exactly. We don't put things like that, but we definitely have devices that we're getting information from. But okay, you are one number your entire life. You might not know your number, or you might change because you weren't like real secure on it. But in truth, your number is your number. And so if you go, but when I was 18, I was this. Well, no, you probably just didn't know the Enneagram, or you hadn't kind of found your true self. But you're one number your whole life. The way that this works is we're going to be talking about motivations. It's why and how you respond to situations. So it's not the behavior itself, it's why the behavior's there. And that can be confusing. Because when you take tests and things like that, you might just pick up on the behavior. If I'm kind of shying away and not wanting to interact with people, you might say, well, this is because of who you are, but you don't know why I'm doing that behavior, and that's really what the Enneagram speaks to. The reason it can be so confusing, when maybe some of you guys were like, well, I took a test, or I did this thing, and there's like 3 different things come out, 3 different numbers. It's because, although you're that one number, you constantly have access easily to different numbers. In fact, there are basically 4 other numbers that you easily have access to, plus your core number. That's 5, so that's more than majority of the Enneagram. And what I mean by that is, and we'll talk about it, we'll just say it right now. You've heard people talk about wings, maybe. Whatever number you are, you got 2 numbers right next to you. So look at your graph. If you're a 9, you have an 8 on one side and a 1 on the other. Go down to 4. If you're a 4, you have a 3 and a 5. Those are right next to you. That's when people talk about wings. That's the wings. Meaning, I'm right here, and I can kind of get some of this personality behaviors and this one's behaviors, and I can take those. Teachers will say one of them is natural, and usually in your younger years, you have one or the other one, and as you mature, you kind of pick up your other one. So you'll see as we talk about it. So those are two numbers that you can look like at times, but it's not your core. And then we got these arrows, these black lines going to two other numbers, one with a white and one with a black tip. And those are what we call, those are places we move in stress and security. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So that's confusing too. So when you're stressed and you're acting, you'll go, oh, I'm looking like this. I'm looking like this number. And so when you're taking the test even, if you're under a stressful time and you're taking the test, you might come out as a one number. And if you take the test when you're real secure, you might look like another number. So that's why you got to talk about it, get to the core. And then you start seeing where you're moving. So that's important. Those stress and health lines, or security and stress and wings. The other thing is, and we won't go into it at all today. This is like, if we do any more of these, this is like basics, and then maybe we would do another one sometime. But then there's even deeper into subtypes. And if you get into subtypes, it will be even different. There's even more differences, and we won't talk a lot about that. But the other thing I love about the Enneagram is there's triads everywhere, meaning that's why there's all these triangles on here, and I don't even have all of them on there. I'll tell you what I like about triads. 3 is it's just a beautiful holy number. There's 3s everywhere in spirituality and in the Bible, and it's crazy how many of these, this kind of idea of Trinity and the 3-ness of things. It's also a circle. People talk about that all of these are aspects of God. So when we're all of them again, it's perfect. It's perfection. There's 9 fruits of the Spirit. This morning I was writing those out and going like, I wonder if I can find if each number fits a fruit of the Spirit. I came up with my own idea on that. So we won't talk about it today. But there you go. Okay, so the reason I mention how complex and all those things are is because one of the things people will do is they'll sit here today, or you'll go, okay, I think I'm a 2. I feel good about that. And then you'll talk to somebody else and they'll go, I'm a 2 too. And you'll look at them and go, we are not the same. So either you're wrong or I'm wrong. No, it has to do, one of them might have a different wing, and it has to do with subtypes. It has to do if you're in stress or security. The other thing is, when we do the teaching, when we go through all these numbers, most people will talk about these are the common things in that number when you're in what we call average space, average day. But as you can imagine, the more healthy you are, the more well-rounded you are, the more you understand, some of those things you won't show anymore because you've kind of moved up into a healthier view that's more well-rounded. Guess what? We also sometimes are in unhealthy space. So we're in our numbers, but we're like, whoa, we're really in our numbers. And so you might be meeting with somebody else that you're the same number, but you guys are even just in a different space at the core. So just because you meet somebody else in your number, you don't have to compare yourself and go, okay, who's the better whatever number? There is no such thing. It's you. It's who you are. Okay. This is a good place to start for those of you who are new. It's also a good place to, if you're kind of confused, you kind of feel like you might you've read a little bit, and there's a few numbers. This is a great place to start, is what we call the centers of intelligence, the first triad. Now here is what this means, center of intelligence. It means probably the best way to say is how you respond and encounter information. So novel, new things in the world, information, your day, you're responding naturally in one of these 3 ways. So how do we get to that? Well, gut, heart, and head would be when you see something new happen, you immediately think, what should I do? What needs to be done? That's a doing thing. Just what needs to be done. The next, if you're in the heart, your immediate thing is, how do I feel about this? How do I feel? How do I feel about this? If you're in the head triad, your first thought is, what do I think about this? One of the questions I'll ask people, and if you've talked with me, when I'm trying to get to this with you on a kind of, or if any of you guys are trying to type other people, because some people are like, I'm trying to figure out other people, is I'll ask them, those of you who've talked to me, the journaling question, is what I'll say to you is if I made you for a week, you're going to have to write something down in a journal every day. And that's just your assignment. Every day you got to write something down at the end of the day. Begin right now to think about what you would write down. And your choices are, you might write down what I did that day. You know, I read a book for 3 hours. I went to work from 8 to 5. This is what I ate, or I exercised for an hour. Some of you will just be very much like that, or I worked from here to here. Some of you might write down your feelings. I feel so sad, or this friend did this to me, or does anybody even care that I'm doing this? But it'll be very feeling oriented. Does that make sense? And then others of you will be writing down concepts, ideas, like I heard this podcast on the idea of peace. What does peace mean? And do I have peace in my life? And here's the definition of it. And all, Can you guess where I'm at? Like I'm a head triad. So if you think about those things, that might help you realize, okay, yeah, I probably would. Or maybe you don't know, but you'd be like, well, I definitely wouldn't be this or this. So for instance, I'm a 5. You're going to see that. That's a head triad. But I wing on the 4 side. So if I was journaling, it'd be mostly ideas, but guess what? I kind of tip over to the, this is where the emotions of it all. I never write down like, I went to this class today, I did this, I'm not what are those things called, bullet journals? Or no, what are those big things, those fads? Is it called bullet journals? You know what people do?
Bullet journals.
Bullet journals. If you have a bullet journal, you're probably on the doing side, because that's a whole bunch of task-oriented doing stuff. So some people will do that. Okay, let's talk a little bit. But I want to just let's do heart first. Say it a little bit if you're still like, I still don't get it. What am I feeling? So here, let me tell you about this. The 2, 3s, and 4s. They're fully aware and always paying attention to the needs and agendas of others. So they're always aware of the needs and agendas of others. And they have a significant need for approval. Yet, they struggle to believe that they are lovable as they are. So in this category. In that striving for their image or their lovable state or their approval, each number, 2, 3, and 4, has a different response to it. 2s strive to have a likable image, helpful. 3s want an image of achievement or success. Still the same idea, but it's about achievement and success. Where 4s, their image is unique and special. They're different. So you see, it's all still this need for approval, but they're all doing it in different ways. And the feeling that's most accessible to them that we talk about is, I put on there, shame or sadness. It's that idea of, am I enough? Am I helping enough? Am I achieving enough? Am I loved enough? Do people understand me enough? There's something missing. Those are all the numbers. So 2s become ultra good, caring for and serving others, whereas 3s try to perfect in performance and achievement, and 4s sometimes can dramatize their losses and hurts because of that sense of not being enough. So that's the what am I feeling triad. The head triad is next. And remember, they're what do I think? And what they want fully to do is to understand everything that interests them. So, they like to gather and sort information and live life by planning. So 5s, but they do it in different ways. So 5s, they detach and they minimize their needs for others. And in that, they underdo fear. Does that make sense? Like by doing that, they're trying to kind of lessen their fear. Whereas 6s are trying to understand the threats and uncertain outcomes so they can prevent something bad from happening. So they're overdoing their fear. So how do I plan so that it's like they sense too much of it? Whereas 7s focus on what is positive and exciting, and they completely underplay fear. They just ignore it. Because it's, let's just go for the fun. So, still trying to understand, they're just reacting to it different. Now, their core emotion, like I mentioned, is fear. It's not anxiety per se. So people say, well, you don't seem anxious, or a 6, you don't seem anxious, because fear and anxiety, as you can imagine, are different things. But fear is, so 5s, like I, experience fear when I have lack of knowledge, when I don't understand everything. That can make me have fear. 6s, when they experience fear when they don't feel secure. This is not safe, or this is not secure. And 7s, it's when they anticipate being trapped, or in boredom, or in pain. That's what 7s are trying to avoid. Okay, and then the gut center, or body center. They want to fully, that they're asking always, what needs to be done? They want to fully stay busy, trying to have control over both their outer and inner world. So they're constantly busy trying to kind of have control over those two things. And here's what's interesting about the gut triad. They assess a room or their environment or their kind of their life instinctively and intuitively on a gut level. I mean, they can intuitively kind of read a room or their environment, and they're aware of conflicts or power or just kind of all of those things that are happening in the room. Agendas, they just know it. And so then they react differently. 8s, they kind of are seeing who's in charge, and then they're kind of saying, like, can I handle it? Like, are they going to overpower me, or are they going to control me? I want to know who's in charge. Whereas 9s, they're coming into the room seeing, where do I fit? And they're going to avoid things that make them uneasy. So they're just going to find a just mellow spot. They don't want to do anything that makes them uneasy. And 1s, you probably are noticing what's wrong with this room, maybe. Like, you came in and you're like, oh, the seats are too close together, or it's too hot, or they should have had better parking outside, or something. There's something kind of probably wrong with just noticing it. That doesn't mean you're critical, but you're just going to notice what was kind of wrong in that room. So all of those, the gut triads, they're converting their emotions. All of their emotions, they usually convert into one emotion, which is anger. That's where it comes out. Meaning, 8s have really easy access to anger. They sometimes overdo anger. 9s underplay anger, and if they need to try to control something, they'll probably do it by kind of passively through kind of quiet resistance, because they're not going to rock the boat. And 1s, they're in conflict with their anger because they know it's not right to be angry. So they kind of try to do things the right way, and it usually will come out as resentment for 1s. They won't say they're angry, but they'll be like, yeah, I resent that. And here's the other thing about gut triad. This triad, they all habitually forget themselves. They kind of forget to pay attention to their own needs and vulnerabilities because they're thinking about all the other stuff. So that is the briefest kind of overview. And the reason I wanted to start an overview with that is to maybe help you as you're reading through this or as we're going through the numbers to kind of pick where you might land. Okay? Before we start, let me say a few things, and then we're going to just take a quick break and let everyone kind of stand up, and if you want to get a snack or water or whatever. But here's the thing. There are tests everywhere out there, and I'm happy. If you took tests and tried to go online and figure out what you are, that's great. It's a starting place. But no test has ever been probably more than about, I think they say 60% accurate. And that's because it's just testing what you think in the moment about this one behavior. The best way to learn is what you're doing right now. Just, you got to hear all the numbers. You got to hear and find yourself in there. If you're talking to somebody that doesn't have time to go to a conference, get them a book. If you want to browse through I have a few books up here. Find a book or start listening to podcasts. You got to hear every number. If you just listen to the one you think you are and you never hear anybody else, you might completely not realize you're mistyping yourself. So you guys are doing good work that you're here today. So take a break. Let's everybody get up. step outside, get some food, and then, short break. I'm only going to give you like 5 minutes. This isn't going to be like a 20-minute break. So and then we'll go through the numbers. Now we're going to go on to these. And a lot of these graphics, this one I'll give Mirabelle Creations. If you start typing in, and if you're on Instagram or whatever, and start finding numbers, I'm probably moving a lot, aren't I? Okay. You will find there's so many creative people out there that take the numbers and do infographics, and I'm just stealing them, borrowing them, but their names are on here. So Mirabelle Creations, I really liked how each of these numbers she did. And did I put those in your? Nope, I put a different one in your guys' handouts. But you can, just look at these. This helps you know. And I was cracking up about this because at least a couple ones that I know, they love fixer-upper shows. I don't know if any other ones in the room, but they love those kind of shows. There's a TV one for each of these: fixer-upper, intentional friends. So just kind of look at these. But okay, remember average space. So we're going to go through the numbers. And I'm going to talk about a passion. So remember, this came out of the Catholic Church at one point, and so they have the kind of 7 deadly sins, and then they added a couple more to hook in with this. So when I talk about the passion, it's one of those 7 deadly sins, except for I think anger, fear, maybe, it doesn't mean that that's the only thing your sin is. It's like not your deadly sin, but you'll see how we talk about it. It's a weak point for that number, and that's kind of an area where they can look at in terms of growth, spiritual growth. So the first one, I'm just going to go 1 through 9. Some teachers start different numbers, and just always done that in my head, so I just have to do it. So it makes it weird because we've been talking about the centers of intelligence, and we're popping over into the gut triad and then go around, but you guys can handle it. Okay, first one, reformer or perfectionist is what we call this one. So when we talk about the passion or the deadly sin, it's, again, anger is not really one, but we've made it one. And again, it's not actually anger, it's resentment, because it's anger turned internalized. You're internalizing that anger, and it comes out as resentment. And with each of these, if you think about what motivates it because there's a fear there. You're a fear of something, and then we act out and we begin to form our personality. So the fear for reformers and perfectionists is kind of being bad or corrupt or unworthy or defective or making a mistake. There's just real sense there that they don't want to do those things. And so what they desire then is this, to do what is right and good and correct, to be full of integrity, and to do what is worthy. And then they find their value by doing those things, what's right and worthy and correct. There's something about ones that is unique on all the other numbers on the Enneagram, and it's the only thing that's what they call like a non-negotiable, and that is that ones, if you're a 1, have to have what we call an inner critic. You have a monitor that is constantly monitoring your behavior, your thoughts. It might be a voice, it might just be your own thoughts, but you absolutely, if you don't have that, you're not a 1. You might be a 9 with a 1 wing or going to 1 space, but you're not a 1. That voice or thought is always assessing you on your correctness, if you're being correct, either yourself or the environment. It's correcting this isn't right, or how you're teaching, or how you're interacting with people. It's assessing that, and that depends on what your subtype is, on where you're getting kind of critiqued. So again, that's why you can look differently. But that voice points out when you mess up. If you mess up parenting, if you mess up in your job, if you're not making the world a better place, if you're not dressed right, if you didn't say the right thing, it's constantly doing that. And so, as you can imagine, that can be very stressful. But in that, we love ones because what do? They make the world such a better place. With that constant bettering themselves and bettering the world around them and bettering their family, things get better. That's actually a good thing. And so that's why I said their superpower is refinement, because they make things so much better. If you wonder still if you're a one, or if you want to know about ones, they're ones that, especially if they're attuned into their environment. Not all ones are environmentally, instinctually trying to perfect their environment, but if that's the kind of one you are, you're going to notice, like, it's going to bug you if a picture's not hanging right. I mean, like, you cannot see it. I have a friend that's a one, and she said that, like, when they redid their fence, her husband did it himself, and there was, like, a little gap on one of the two, like, just one of them in their whole yard. One of them. And she was like, I can almost, like, not even go outside, because I just see it every time. Ones, you cannot not see it. It's there. And so you got to get it fixed, or else you're just going to always avoid that part of your house. So what do we need to do? So I'll just say this. Control is very important for ones. But it's focused on their own belief of what is correct. And that's what ones have to remember, is although you feel like absolutely this is right, you have to remember that's your own sense. It's, the way you're loading the dishwasher, that you're sure this is the right way, I hate to tell you, that's just your idea of what's right. It's not necessarily the right way. Their focus is outward. They compare themselves, again, and that outward focus is always in comparison. How am I doing on this compared to this? How am I doing on this? Or how does this look? And there's this standard that they feel, again, they're in the gut triad. They feel it in their gut that something is right or correct. And they use a lot of language in their head or out loud of should. Should do this. This should be like this. This should. My mom is a one. She thought forever she was a two. Because she wings over there on that two, that helper. We're going to talk about them next. But as kids, we were all like, she's a one. She doesn't realize it. She's a one. She's finally embraced it, and we're so happy. But the reason we knew she was a one, because that sense of constantly, when we'd be out like driving, or there's, somebody cuts in line, you could just see her like, they're not supposed to do that. This is the right, you're supposed to follow the rules. You're supposed to do that. And so that was very important to her. So we love her, but we know what's supposed to be is important to her. And she's not a two. Some of you guys. Now, there's, again, gifting is in the ability to evaluate, compare, measure. They can discern experiences. They're hardworking, loyal, practical, so very responsible. Even if it means doing everything themselves, they're going to get a project done or a task done. They are so dependable. I mean, we need our ones in our lives to do these things really well for us. One of the things that when some of you are parents, and so part of learning the Enneagram is to help with our kids too. So if you have kids that are ones, what can you imagine that they're going through at that school? They want to do things just right. And so one of the worst things to say to a one is, oh, that's good enough. Don't say that to a one, because they know in their head what it's supposed to be. And so just even for our kids too that are ones, oh, I know you missed two on the spelling test. That's great. It's good enough. For them, there's an internal sense of it's not good enough. And so we have to recognize that about them, that is an internal thing that they're constantly doing. Some ones will tell you that it's hard to sleep at night because they're reviewing all the things in their day that they kind of fell short on. So one of the things that ones can do, and so what do you say? Sorry, I'm going to go back to ones saying it's good enough. Don't say that to them. So what do we say? How do we help ones? We say this. How can I help you get this to where you need it to be? Because they have a sense. So that doesn't mean we just leave them or just say, why are you so worried about this? Like my friend with the fence, her husband should say, how can I help? How can we get this to where you need it to be? Redo the whole fence. Okay. If that's what we need to do, we'll do. But no, there's usually a way to get to that point of where they need to be. Okay, so the growth comes, so if you are a 1, if you're finding yourself in this space, and you're like, yeah, that is me. Again, you don't just go, that's me. There's growth that can happen. And one of the things that 1s have to learn to do is, and some people would say name that inner critic, but recognize it and tell it to be quiet sometimes. That's hard to do, but some people name it funny names and just are like, just quiet down, so-and-so. Because you have to understand that that's what that is. That standard it's trying to tell you to do is not, even though you feel like it's the truth, it's not. It really isn't. When you see that the 1s go to 7, you see that line in health, they go over to 1. What that's about is being able to relax and sometimes for 1s when they can go on a vacation or not have responsibilities and get away, that voice can quiet down because it's not in that part where they're constantly having to evaluate. Now for some 1s, a vacation wouldn't be fun because they're still stressed and feeling those things out. You've got to find what it is that helps you turn down that voice and be quiet. But that's that kind of going into 7 space. And they can find that freedom and excitement of fun unburdened by the responsibilities they express. They can become flexible and enjoy. And again, sometimes that's on trips. Sometimes it's just going away to Wichita. Whatever it is, going to see your kids, but finding a way to move to that 7 space. In terms of when they're stressed, and now this is what I love about, again, Enneagram teaching, that there's always a choice. Although when stressed, so we'll talk about this, 1's going to sink over to 4, there's a choice to do it in a healthy way. We can't prevent stress. But we have a choice on how we're going to react. So let's talk about stress, because that's maybe when you see yourself in some of these numbers. So when you're stressed, first you already do your number in a more, overdo your number. That's where we all start first. The part of this is recognizing, when am I being overdoing my number? So as 1s get stressed, they start insisting that everything be done correctly. They're a lot more rigid. And standards become more absolute. A friend told a story just recently on Facebook about being in McDonald's line, and they were, there's that. I'm ordering, this person's ordering. She finished ordering, and this person was still ordering, so she starts driving forward. Well, this person drove up sideways next to her and started yelling at her because it was her turn. Saying, go back up, I'm next in line, basically. And this Misty Beck was like, okay, I'll just, even though I was, here. And she said this is an older woman who was just livid, just cursing. That would be a 1, getting a little too much, stress. So there was something stressed in that person's life, and they were overdoing it. All they could see was, it's my turn, and I'm going to just, lose it because it's my turn to go next. See, compassion. If I was me, I would have been like, aw, that is a stressed 1. Go ahead. Go ahead. I don't really need that. Okay, so first they start doing everything more in that absolute, but then as they slide into that 4 space, and you guys are like, we haven't talked about 4s, so sorry, you're just going to have to trust me. They become a lot more inward, and they can become melancholic. And what you'll find in the unhealthy part of 4, they start feeling just kind of desperate and chaotic and sarcastic, and it's just this kind of space where they can only kind of see themselves. Now that's the unhealthy slide. But there's a choice. If you're a 1 and you're stressed, you can't avoid that. So what could you do in 4 space that's healthy? Well, the healthy part of 4 is creative, less critical, adding something, entertaining, kind of both and thinking, that deep kind of ability to understand that the world is more, it's bigger than just you and what seems to be right. So 1s have to go, they can go to that 4 space and actually pull out something really beautiful, even when they're stressed, by taking the high side of 4, per se. As we get to, that's the other thing, is as we get through each number, the reason you shouldn't just blow off all the numbers but yours is because, remember, you have access to all these, so it's good to learn about all of them. so that you know where you're moving around to these things. So when we get all you ones, when we get to 4 and we get to 7, pay attention because you're going there much of your time, and you can again choose to do it healthy or unhealthy. Okay, so those are ones. Amy.
I would say it's a little bit painful to be a 1.
Okay.
Painful to be any of the numbers.
Sure.
Once you start maybe into
Yes.
it, but, even though I have a way that I think things should be, the painful part is trying to look at other people's views and
Accept
that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So it's out of love a lot of times.
Yes, that's good, Amy, for you to say that because it is. It's out of love. Remember, no, that it's again, and if it's in your gut, if you just see the world that way, and it's not like they're making a decision. They just have a real sense of this is how it should be or how it should look or whatever. And so you're right, and it's out of love. And reformer, they're making the world a better place. So we have to remember that. You told me about when with the gold, it matches with the gold on the 4 colors or whatever. But I have to say, again, there's instincts that we'll talk about it, but there's self-preservation, social, and relational, one-on-one. And so each of us has in our numbers where we're directing that reforming and perfectionism. And so if you're a self-preservation one, it's really about yourself that you're the hardest, and you're paying attention to that. If you're a social one, it looks different because what you're reforming, you're trying to perfect is the world around you. And so certain teachers or whatever profession you're in, but you're trying to make the world a better place. And so you can be hard on yourself if you're not making that world or living up to reforming the world. If you're a relational one, the thing that you're noticing a lot more is everybody else around you, like your family. You're noticing where they're falling short or they're not quite doing things. And so depending on where you're at, and we all have 1 or 2 of those, I want you to see that that's how it could look different. But the key is a sense of what should be, and you're trying to make whatever that is, yourself, your family, the world, into that what should be. Okay, let's move to helper. And so now that was just we just started, it's a 1, gut, now we're going to move over to head triad. So I know that that's confusing, but now we got to start talking about feelings, so these 2, 3s, and 4s. So 2, the helper. See, their show is Friends. I don't know if we have any 2s in there, if you would say you love Friends, but that's a real relational, fun show. Again, their pride, again, it doesn't mean their passion, their sin is pride. Here's what's weird, is most 2s you're not going to actually think of as prideful. It's not like they're going around looking prideful. We'll talk about where pride comes into it. But their fear that's driving their desire they fear being unworthy or being unloved. And so what do they desire then? The opposite, being loved and needed, specifically to important people in their lives. So remember, 2s are seeing the world relationally, and they're connecting to the world relationally, and they are so skilled at picking up what other people are feeling and what other people need. They just intuitively do that. Everything is relational. And then as they pick up those senses from other people about what they need or how they're feeling, their compulsion, unlike 1s are just compelled to do the right thing. 2s are compelled to help, to insert themselves. They just they have to. And that's how they feel loved. And that's how they find approvals, by meeting other people's needs. So without even trying, without even meaning to, they feel afraid that you won't need them. And so here's the thing about 2s. When you leave them out of special events or forget to let them know about a crisis in your life, they will feel, this is strange, they feel shame because you didn't let them in and they weren't able to help you. And so now they feel bad about themselves because they weren't able to do that. They think they should have known. I should have known. And there comes that fear of, I must not mean as much to them as I thought. If they didn't tell me that, if they forgot, I must not be that important to them. And so therefore they feel bad. But as you can imagine, then they have a superpower. All of these have a superpower because it's what's good, what we need about you. And that is, for twos, really, it's that empathy, because they're ultra attuned to everyone else's emotions and feelings. Now here's the thing with twos that's interesting, is when you ask them how they feel, they will generally tell you about somebody else's feelings. They're really out of tune with their own feelings. They'll tell you about somebody else's feelings. They're out of tune with their own needs, and yet, man, they can read other people's needs just in an uncanny way. They're the ones that are going to come up and go, how are you doing? Or I sense that you're not doing well, whatever. They just know. So although they're expressive, and we might say emotional, but it's usually they're expressing somebody else's emotions or what else is going on in their lives. They also believe in their gut, or not their gut because it's their heart triad, but that their generosity is altruistic. That they are doing this out of the goodness of kind of who they are in their heart. And yet, when they give too much, it really leaves little for themselves and for those around them. And again, then they start feeling shame. Oh, I went and did this, and my husband didn't get my attention, and now I feel bad. Or my kids didn't because I was out doing this, and now I'm going to feel bad about it myself. So let's talk about where does pride come. Well, because in this altruism, beneath it, is this unspoken assumption that they may not even be aware of, that because they're taking care of your needs, you're going to take care of them. And when they need you, you're going to be there. And you better somebody needs to recognize what I'm doing. So that's the pride part. It comes in their inability or unwillingness, one, to know and name their own needs. I know that sounds weird, but you can be prideful by not saying, this is what I need and I feel this way. And they can be prideful of being too busy taking care of other people. I know it's a weird sense, but that's where that comes from. So, again, they're gifted in perceiving others' feelings, resistant to their own. But let's talk about their gifts again. Genuinely gifted in listening, cheerful, optimistic, warm, and friendly. And of course, they're givers. Churches need twos, because when they ask for who wants to volunteer to bring food to the potluck, guess what? The twos are going to be like, yeah, that's me. Who can be here to do this or make dinner or do that? The twos are like, yep, because it's a need. So as you can imagine, then they can get real burnt out, taking care of everything like that. So the growth, twos, if you're picking up on that and going, yes, that is me all the way. Here's what your growth comes. You got to start asking yourself, what's mine to do? Or am I doing this expecting something out of return? Or, I know this sounds silly, does that person actually want my help? Those are tough questions, because the answer might be no. And that doesn't mean you're not loved. Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you just because that person doesn't need you. They're probably a 5 on the Enneagram, and they don't want to be needed, so they're gonna push you away. Okay, so under stress, this is what happens with twos. So look at your little chart. See where twos are going. They're going to 8 under stress. But first, what do? They get more excessive in their own number, so they start saying yes to more things. I think Suzanne Stabile says this, and I don't know about other twos. I know a few twos in my life. They can sense they start getting kind of unhealthy or stressed because they'll be at the grocery store and they're just automatically looking for somebody to help, just without even knowing, can I help? One of my friends that's a two, she is in a Bible study with me, and she used to tell these funny stories about taking people home from the store, grocery store. Like the checker that's checking them out, she'll be like, are you okay? And then, they're ringing them up and they start telling their whole story. I think you should come over to my house for coffee. Like that, just because they intuitively know something's wrong, and it's with complete strangers. So when twos are starting to meet the needs of strangers, you are probably getting stressed. Like it's time to take care of yourself and go like, this is too much. And so what happens is, as they lose their discernment about what they should be helping with. And then they start going into 8 space, and we're going to talk about 8s. 8s are kind of in that confrontational, kind of very passionate people. But when 2s go to 8 unhealthily, they start blaming others for their unhappiness. And they'll actually get pretty angry and unhappy. And they'll feel empty, like nothing matters. And then they can actually become demanding and controlling in their home environments and aggressive without even realizing it. It's because nobody's recognizing what they're doing. So what do they do? What can they do in stress? Because we all get stressed. They say yes to too many things. What's a healthy 8? Boundaries. 8s are great at boundaries. 8s are great at saying no. So what 2s need to do when they start getting stressed is they actually need to say no. And so that's really the key, is when you start recognizing that you're being pulled to help with things that aren't yours, it should be, I need to say no. And they need that. It's survival. These moves are natural in some ways because it's how we survive. It's how we get rebalanced, actually, by saying no. Okay, insecurity. So when 2s are feeling secure. And when I say secure, meaning life feels secure. Your family, your job situation, whatever. There's a sense of security in your life. That's when you can make these other moves. They go to 4, and the move in there is actually more inward. So we already talked about 4s. When 1s go to 4, it's a need to become, for 2s, more focused on yourself instead of everybody else. And finding what you need to do, and they can find some solitude to take care of themselves. So you'll hear me talk, probably one of my favorite teachers of the Enneagram is Suzanne Stabile, and she has 3 books out, and she's a 2. And she always talks about, like, she can't write her books as a 2 until she gets healthy, and then she can be creative and have solitude and actually put in some effort to doing something instead of taking care of all the needs of others. 2 is also really valued in our society. Women often will identify as 2s because we've always said, oh, you're a woman, you need to help, you need to do all of these things. And so sometimes just on first blush, people go like, I'm a 2, because you're helping. But you have to go look behind the help to find out why you're doing it. Is it because of what we already talked about? Okay, 2s, the dream friend. 2s are dream friends for those of us because they do help us. You call your 2s when you're somebody pick up your kids at school because they're going to do it. You said the word need, and they're happy to help. Okay. We're going to do 3, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll keep going. But let's move to 3, just since we're on a roll. The achiever, or some people say entertainer. This person chose the the TV show American Idol because that's a competitive show that's kind of fun to watch. If you're a 3, you might like that. Okay, 3s, their passion or the deadly sin is deceit. All of these are not, this is what I love about these. They sound awful, deceit, but it's nuanced. And it's nuanced for 3s just like pride was nuanced for helpers and anger is nuanced for 1s. This is deceit comes in kind of like a chameleon, being able to change their image and kind of deceive themselves. But we'll talk about that. So what do 3s fear? They fear being worthless or without value, just like 2s fear not being loved or approved, but it's focused now more on achievement. So their desire is to find approval through achieving and succeeding. 3s naturally see the world as a giant kind of competition. They cannot, just like all these other numbers can't help it, they just look at things as, can I be the best? Or what does it take to win this or achieve this? And so the way they do that is they can naturally understand kind of the rules, the cues of social groups and organizations and activities. And if it's something they're interested in, they will know what it takes to succeed and succeed. So if they're not interested, it's not like they know everything and find out all the rules. But if it's something they're interested in, they're going to do that. So without even trying, they see situations and know what it takes to appear. Now here's the trick: to appear successful or actually be successful or win. So this is what's fun about, like, if we talk about, if you guys saw the Halloween meme or the on Enneagram types or church potluck or something like that, threes are going to be like, I want mine to look the best and be the best. I mean, like, there's this unwritten rule. They're not going to tell you that. They're going to put a lot of effort in, like, bringing the best. And that's why in the Halloween memes, I love it. They're the ones giving out the king-size chocolate bars because they want everyone to be like, ooh, they're the best. And so they just have that sense of, I'm going to do it the best. The other thing about that, family photos, we're all going to match. It's going to look the best. In grades, and this is one way to help differentiate ones and threes. So if I'm talking to somebody that's like, they both kind of seem like they're competitive or doing the best, you have to ask, ones, they want to get an A or 100% because, like, that's perfect. They didn't make an error. A three, they don't have to get an A, but they want the best grade in the class. Does that make sense? They want to be better than their friends, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So that's a key difference. But again, it could look similar, but you have to ask them why. Okay. Because they get approval and love by doing what by achieving or doing, then their superpower then is being aware of that and what's valued, what credentials are needed, what image is needed, what the system needs to be on the top. And they can alter to become that, but threes are the ones, because they are aware of that. We need threes in the publishing industry, the music industry, in churches. I mean, because they know how to make something successful. And they usually can do it in a very efficient way. They know the most efficient way to do that. And so we need those threes. They can really focus and do things well. Okay, here's what's tricky if you're a three is you might go, but how am I on the feeling triad? Because they do feelings differently. They're despite being in the heart triad, they're disconnected from their feelings because feelings are inefficient. So they feel things, but they go, I'm going to set it over here. I'll deal with it later. And they have that ability to do that. And so they have emotions and feelings. They just, I'll get to it when I get to it because I'm still trying to go here. And they're so skilled at watching and observing others because that's how they know how they can succeed, that sometimes, this is interesting about threes, they can offer the appearance of feelings that they're not actually feeling. So they can actually look like maybe if they were at a funeral and they're watching everybody and everyone's crying, they might be able to cry because that's what is expected and that's what everyone around them is doing without actually at the heart of them feeling sad at that moment, which is interesting that they can do that. They can put on all those different things. Efficiency and effectiveness is priority. And sometimes that's more important than even the other needs of others. This is something interesting about threes because they selectively pay attention to positive things over negative. So let's say you're a three and you're a farmer. You're going to be a little bit on the like, oh no, we're going to do great. This is going to be, I read this report and I'm only seeing the positive because we're going to do this. So they tend to ignore some of those negative things. And then they also usually, threes have a hard time admitting to failure. What instead they do is they'll reframe it as kind of a partial victory. Or they might blame somebody else because they're just so competitive. Beneath them, though, there's a fear that people will see them, a part of them that they don't want them to see, and they fear not being enough. Or they also fear that if that image is gone somehow, they won't have anything else left. So that's kind of what's driving them. They're very high energy, can be workaholics. They do make lists and organize well, and they're the best number on the Enneagram for multitasking. They can just do that really easily. Those of you who know me, I'm always like, gosh, I need a 3 in my life that wants to help me become famous or something, because I don't have it ever. But 3s would know exactly what to do. They would know what the book needs to look like. They would know who to call. They would organize it, because that's just how they see the world. They would know this is what it takes. And what's funny is if you look at lots of famous authors and artists, people that are podcast people that have like 1 million followers, they're either probably 3s, 7s, or 8s. So usually 3 or 8s are the ones that are out there, aggressive, busy, and can be successful. And or they're married to or have in their lives a 3 or an 8. So just pay attention to that. It's always so interesting. So if you're a 3 out there and want to focus your own energy, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, the growth for 3s. So what do 3s need to do? They need to try to be rather than do. They've got to pause and reflect and be aware of their emotions instead of just moving on towards an achievement. They need to stop and feel. So when they're stressed, they initially feel more shame because they're not meeting up to their kind of whatever they're competing at, and they become overly competitive. And sometimes they'll embellish success, that deceit. 3s will, again, the image that they're presenting isn't always true per se. It's. I mean, they believe in it, but it's matching whatever it is to be successful. So when they're stressed, that becomes more so, and that's where the deceit comes in. But then as they slide further into stress, they move into 9 space, and we'll get to them. And in a negative, unhealthy way, you'll find that 9s sometimes have a hard time prioritizing things and being focused and making decisions. So when 3s are unhealthy, it kind of goes into this chaotic, like, I just don't know what to do, and I don't have a priority, but I'm trying to be competitive, and now I feel more shame because I can't get anything done. But there's always a choice, and there's a healthy way to do that. 9s can, recognize the good parts of 9s, that they don't have to make everything happen, and they can relax and be less competitive. And 9s tend to be very group oriented, or kind of the group, and so 3s can say, okay, what can the group offer here for this to be? And I don't need the recognition anymore. And then finally, in security, when all things is going well, they move into 6 space. They don't have to be in the spotlight. They can participate in projects that they have little influence on. They insert a healthy round. You'll find 6s are questioners. They ask questions before moving too quickly. They take that from their 6th space. One of the ways to think about 3, and then we'll take a break, is 3s I know in my life, because they are so competitive by nature, that doesn't mean necessarily in sports. It just means that whatever thing you present to them, they want to know, what are the expectations? I want to do their best. So I have a 3 that's a friend, and like if she does a marriage study, she's like, I'm gonna do every part of it, and I'm gonna do it the best, and what needs to be done. I have a friend that's, I think, a 3 going through therapy right now, addiction therapy. They're like 110%. I'm gonna go to every meeting. I'm gonna do everything, because that nature of, I'm gonna do this the best, not perfect, but I'm gonna be there. They just want to know, what is it? And then I'm going to do it. And I want to be the best doing it. And so it's great, except from a spiritual standpoint, sometimes you don't do 5. You don't need to just do list. So that slow down. I don't have to do my devotions every day and check it off, because I want to come to my book club and say, yes, I read everything, and I put together this, paper. The only other funny story I have is I took a friend of ours, I think their kid is a 3, and we went on a birthday party. And I just jokingly said, when, the store like Orange Leaf where you fill your things, and they all, overfill ice cream, and it's like so expensive. And this was probably when they were in 3rd grade or something. And so I was kind of like, I'll give the prize to whoever can finish their ice cream. So I was like, no one's finishing this ice cream. I mean, and so a lot of the kids are like, they ate half of it. It's such a waste. And there was one little boy who's like, trying to eat, and you could just see he's kind of getting sick, and he's like, and I was like, hey, and we're all also now trying to go. I was like, hey, what, like, you don't have to eat all that. And he was like, you said there's a prize for whoever, and I was like, I was kidding, like I wasn't really gonna give a prize. And you could just see like, he was gonna make himself sick because he was going to win, because that's how he was. I'm sure he's a 3, and as he's growing up, I'm like, yeah. So 3s are often, they're dressed nice. They know what's fashionable. If you have 3s in your eyes, ask them, like, does this look good? Because they'll know. They just are aware, even if they're not doing it. Okay, I love my 3s, and I need them in my life. So let's do a quick break, 5 minutes, stretch, and bathroom, snacks, and then we're going to hit 3 more. Okay, let's move to 4. The individualist. I like the word individualist more than romantic, because some people are like, I'm not romantic. But some of those people, some words people use that word as a romantic. Now, again, here's their passion. This doesn't really make sense, but it's envy, but not envy as in jealousy. It's envy as in something's missing, or there's longing inside for something that's not theirs, or something more, you could say. So their fear is that to be without identity or personal significance, or kind of being abandoned. And so therefore their desire is to be known and to be understood, and therefore loved and accepted, and that you won't leave. So that's when they feel loved, especially when they're understood as their own unique self. The thing I love about 4s is they see the world in such rich textures and depth. They're so deep. And they're always but they feel like they're kind of on the outside. So if you know people that are 4s or you're 4, there's always a sense of you're just never quite apart. And they're really comfortable. And this is what makes them very unique, because they are comfortable with kind of melancholy and pain. They're okay with it. While the rest of the world is like, cheer up, move on, don't, come on, move forward. They can handle it. They can sit in it. It's not uncomfortable for them. In fact, sometimes it's more pleasant because it's familiar. Now, I don't mean like all out depression, like woe is me. Yes, there can be some of that, but I'm just talking about that depth, kind of angsty feeling of like, oh, the world. Just that feeling like there's this kind of depth sadness to it. In a comfortable way. And sometimes if that's not there, like if things are going too happy and positive, there's such a pullback that sometimes they'll kind of create or look for where is the depth and the sadness, because surely life isn't this boring and happy. You know what I mean? Like let's bring that into it. They are the most complex number. So if you feel like you're a complex person, you might be a 4, because you're very complex. And I like this. They look for the beauty in everything. They're always kind of seeking and aware of beauty. And then they kind of meet life with an intensity that other numbers don't have. So without even trying, remember all of these are like these natural responses. We don't wake up thinking we're going to be this. So without even trying, that feeling that some things might be missing or that the world might be against them is just natural. And so they're trying to be whole and loved by being understood. And so they're superpower. They are so skilled at being aware and comfortable with really deep emotional things like suffering and tragedy, aesthetic, painful beauty. Like they're so comfortable with that allows this amazing validation in the rest of us that life is like that, but also this creative spirit of being able to take that and do something with it. And so 4s Fours, and here's what fours, they're on that feeling trap. They'll experience many moods in a day. And they can swing from one extreme to the other. So 4s and 5s will say we're similar in that we have lots of things in our brain at the same time. But for 4s, it's emotions and feelings. I've heard people say it's like being on a highway of like 8 lanes, and they're like all coming out, and you're trying to decide which one to feel. Like happy, sad, like it's just so much feelings. Whereas 5s is the same, except it's with thoughts. So many thoughts. Which one do I pay attention to? Often 4s will look for flaws and new opportunities in relationships, but they do that, maybe not even realizing it, so that they won't be surprised or disappointed later, because they don't want you to leave. They don't want to be alone in the world. And so protecting kind of in that sense, even though it's this like paradox, like I want to be understood, but I kind of don't want to let you know everything, because what if you reject me, and therefore I'm going to find a flaw in you. Often, which is interesting, kind of like 2s, they can commit to more things than they can handle. And then they'll over-identify with their failures when they can't do all of those things. But again, it's for a different reason. 2s are doing it because they're overcommitting, because they need to be helpful. And that's just how they're loved. But 4s are just overcommitting to things, and then they go, I can't get this all done. And then, something's wrong with me. See, can't get this done, and I didn't do this, and so there comes this shame. So beneath this quest to be loved as their authentic self, they want to be completely understood, but there's this fear that they're too much and that we're going to leave them. There are 2 numbers that I'll hear people say are they're too much, and that's 4s and 8s. 8s more for their anger and their intensity and passion. 4s just because of their own unique self. People, they sometimes just feel like they're too much. They're not, but they feel like they are. But again, I love our 4s. Just they're gifted at recognizing beauty and authenticity. That's the other buzzword. I don't know if I put that on there. Authentic. If you have anybody in your life that talks about authenticity or being authentic, they're either 5 winging 4 or 3 maybe winging 4, but there's something that's got to have that 4 in there. Because that's really important. They're not going to be fake at all. And then again, they're highly creative and comfortable with pain and with your pain. That's what I love about 4. If you need a 4 in your life if you're going through something, because they kind of love it. Like I have several 4s in my life, but it's almost like, are you sure you're okay? Because I'm right here. I'd be willing to take this pain of yours if you want to give it to me. But they're just the person to walk through something, because they can be with you. They're not uncomfortable. If you're sitting there just losing it all, they're just going to sit and they're comfortable. They're not going to try to make you feel better. They're not going to try to just like put on a silk, let's be happy. They're just going to be with you. And we love our 4s for that. So how do 4s grow? They've got to stop, because remember, I think we talked about this at the beginning, 2s, 3s, and 4s are always kind of seeing the world around them and comparing and stuff like that. But 4s, that comparison can become negative, and then they get overwhelmed and they sabotage relationships to avoid abandonment. So and the other thing 4s have to do, because they see beauty and they're authentic and all that, is a lot of times 4s have a hard time doing really mundane things, boring things. They're like, do I have to do laundry? I mean, like, I am made for something more than laundry. And so, but really, those kind of like boring, mundane things are really challenging, because they have that kind of beauty. I have a nephew a cousin that's a 4. This is such a 4 thing. He was going through a distressful time in his life, and all of a sudden we see a post on Instagram. He lives in Kansas City. He had driven to Colorado to like touch a mountain. And I remember I was like, what? But he was like in distress, and it was like beauty and courage. I just need to go be at a mountain to help me. And I was like, that is such a 4 thing, like to that beauty and aesthetic, and that was so important, and I love it. But I'm not going to drive to go touch a mountain if I'm, but it was still good. So as you can imagine, lots of our artists, our poets, our writers, our people in theater, I mean, like a lot of those people are 4s. If you're not one of those and you're 4, that doesn't mean something's wrong with you, okay? You're just doing it. We all still have our places, but the other thing, a message for 4s that I think is important, because I would use the word longing. There's this kind of longing in 4s, or not quite rightness with 4s. I think they can be ultra hard on themselves because they're always looking for something to fill that. And when, especially in our faith in Christianity, when we go, well, just God's the answer for everything. He's just going to fill you up. I think if I was a 4 and I had that and I just still had that, I would think, well, then I guess, I don't know, Christianity's not working for me or something, or God's not working because I'm not getting filled. God is there and still working. The idea for 4s is not to get rid of that feeling. It's always going to be there, but know that God made you uniquely who you are and use that. But don't think that you're failing because you still have that feeling. Because in all these numbers, 2s, you would say the same thing. I go to church, I love God. Why do I still feel compelled to help others? And why can't I get over that? That's who you were made to be. So all of us have that thing in us that we think, why is it still there? The goal is not to get rid of it. The goal is knowing that God created you like that. So how do I use that to make the world a better place, to make my life and the people around me better, to make me whole? So I just want to tell that to 4s because that longing intensity is pretty real. And that can be very hard to live life feeling like you're never quite there. And I can't believe I forgot, like, under stress or under security, how you move. Because you want to do this. Okay. Yeah, I totally skipped over. So let's talk about when 4s go to 2. So, because you do. You 4s have 2s and 4s, you guys, you probably see some of yourself in some of those other numbers. And so it can be kind of tricky. But, so when 4s get stressed and they start getting in the excess of their numbers, they can actually give into their mood swings and become self-indulgent. And as they move in an unhealthy way to 2, they can actually become overly dependent on other people because they're giving in a kind of codependent way. Because their fear of being abandoned leads them to give, but they're still a 4. So, and they may push and pull more than normal. 4s, you may find yourself kind of, I need you, I don't want you, I need you, I don't want you more when you're getting stressed. So what the healthy move to 2 would be then, as Bailey's asking, because that is a good move under stress, actually, to be at a healthy 2, is you can look outwards from your own stuff, what's going on, and start seeing kind of what is going on in other people's lives, and kind of find the ability to support other people and kind of moving out of yourself, if that makes sense. And you can kind of find a positive view of what's possible in a relationship. Kind of manage your feelings and not over-focus on your own internal experience. So what 4s, if you go to 2 and you start kind of helping others, you start going, even though you're stressed, you're like, let me give to you, not in a, because I don't want you to leave me way, but in a, what can I give? Maybe it's important for a 4 not to give to somebody that's close to them so that they can't get that alternate behavior. Maybe you go volunteer for something, or you do, step in and be a part of another organization so that you're helping, but it's not about you being loved or appreciated. And that gets you out of that inner kind of like, ugh. I mean, it's still going to be there, if that makes sense, but you're doing more outwardly. To say just one quick thing, what Caleb was talking about, subtypes. And since we have lots of 4s in the room, or you guys may know 4s who are in your life, there's a relationship with suffering, as we've already said, pain and suffering that 4s have. And the 3 in the subtypes, if you're a self-preservation 4, you're more aware of your own suffering, and you are more comfortable talking about it or expressing it. Does that make sense? So you'll say to someone, this happened to me, I can't believe this happened to me, and you'll just be vocal about it. And so people in your life sometimes are like, we're tired of hearing about the hardships in your lives. Like, we all have hardships, but you're like, no, it's different, mine is different. But that's a self-preservation 4. If you're a social 4 like Caleb was talking about, what's different about social 4s is it's their suffering or things that happen in the world, they might not even relate to that, but we call it long suffering. You're not going to hear about those. Those 4s are not going to tell you about what's going on. They might feel it. They might be thinking about things, and because 4s can go to that 5 wing and think about things, but you're probably not going to ever hear about the things that happened to them that they've felt deeply or felt wounded by or whatever. They're going to keep that more internal, more in an introverted way. If you're a 1-on-1 4, part of that hard suffering pain, believe it or not, you're going to notice it more in your one-on-one relationships, that one person in your life or two people in your life. And you're going to be really focused on that kind of, don't abandon me, that person. Don't leave me, stay here, don't leave me. And then sometimes, without even realizing it, to avoid the suffering, you won't even know you're doing it, but you kind of want them to suffer, that other person. Because you've been dealing with it enough. And so it's your turn. Uh-oh, Laura. Larissa, I mean. No, it's good.
It goes back to just me and my husband. Like, I'm suffering. Why are you not getting into your emotions with me?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of, it's your turn to suffer a little bit. Yep. So just be aware of that. Okay. Let's move on to 5. Oops, I went past. This is the observer. I don't mind claiming this one. So I'll speak, this one I'll be able to speak in terms of because these are all my things. My passion or sin is avarice, which is greed. And again, nuanced. I don't feel like I'm a greedy person, like financially, like I'm not like hoarding all my money. But I am greedy for privacy and knowledge. I am definitely greedy for those two things. I fear being useless or incapable and incompetent. So, of course, those are what I desire most. So, unlike a 4 who wants to be understood, I wing 4, so there's a part of me that understands that, but my biggest thing is I want to understand. That is my absolute Achilles heel. So that's what I'm desiring. I see the world in a very detached way. 5s are very detached. They detach so easily. I just detach so easily. And so I'm trying to understand and analyze everything. And I do that with a sense of, this sounds weird, scarcity. Self-reliance and scarcity. I kind of feel like maybe there's not enough. Unlike, so this is the opposite of 4s. 4s want more. I'm like less. And there is less. I feel like in the world, and I want less, because I don't want to have to rely on it. I don't want to have to need it. The best analogy I have that helped me explain myself to other people is an iPhone battery. Have you guys ever plugged your phones in and then they didn't charge, and you wake up in the morning and it's like not charged enough, and there's there's a little bit of maybe you're at work and you realize you only have 20% left of your battery. And so what do you have to start doing? You have to kind of start prioritizing, I guess I'm not going to surf Facebook for 2 hours because I only have 20%. Let's say you don't have a charger. You have to kind of think through, with that 20%, what am I going to do? And maybe you're driving home that night, and so you also can't run out of batteries at all. You don't want to get to 0 because you're going to need it when you drive home or get directions to wherever you're okay, that's how my life is. I wake up every morning feeling like I only have 20%. And I have got to manage my day so that I don't run out. Because I guess I assume something terrible will happen if I run out. And so we'll get to 7. 7s have 110% and their battery never runs out. They just go. But so that helps to me explain to the rest of you who aren't 5s is why 5s are constantly withdrawing and saying no to things and not showing up, because we only have so much and we don't want to run out. We feel safe then by not needing anything, by being completely independent. And so our superpower is that ability to detach and understand things at a deeper level. So we're very deep in our thinking, and we can think our ways to emotions. But we might not express those emotions, and so therefore our emotions are usually delayed. Unlike a 3 who could set aside, they're this is inefficient, I'm just going to just disregard that. For me, if there's a death in my family, it won't be till day 4 or 5 that I've really kind of finally thought through to what that means, and I will feel sadness. I might not even cry, but I'll feel it. Not in the moment. It's going to take some days because I'm so detached from it all. So fives are the most internally focused. And I am going to say this is good. We're the only number capable of true neutrality. Those of you who heard me talk about my recent jury trial, I loved it because I feel like fives can be totally neutral and just take in data, and we don't have a bias in that sense, if in that moment. So again, things most limited. And of that thing that's most limited, when our battery, it's a sense of time. So any demand on time or energy, I should say, is draining for us. And it really makes relationships tricky for fives, believe it or not. Because we don't know what you're going to expect or demand of us. And so we tend to have only a few close friends because, I always tell people the worst, this is for those who want to be friends with me, the worst thing to do for me is to say, I had a friend who did this once, text me like, are you free? Or like, are you like, yeah, do you have some time? Are you free? And immediately it's like, what does that mean? Like, is she coming over? Do I have 5 hours? What is like? I just immediately am like, I don't know how to answer this question because what do you need from me? And I think I was like, what's up? Or she's like, can you come? She was working at the time. She was like, can you run by up here she was working at Legends, and I was like, oh, okay, she's my friend. I'm going to do it. But I remember leaving the house thinking like, I don't know. Like, am I going to be gone for 6 hours? Is she in crisis? Well, I'm a doctor, so she was like, does this need stitches? That's what she wanted me to run up there for. And I was like, why didn't you just send me a picture? Or text me and say, I have something for you to look at medically. It's only going to take 5 minutes or something like that. Like, so I went, but you don't understand how scary that was for me because I didn't know what was going to happen. So when you reach out to me, give me limits or say like, hey, do you have time? You don't have to say 2 hours. You don't have to tell me that. But man, I love it when people give me like, I need you for an hour. I'll go. I'll show up. But if you don't give me that, I'm probably not going to show up because I don't know what you need. So that's just being honest. I'm just letting you know. If you have fives in your life, you'll know. Okay. They detached, like I said. But we resist having needs. We don't ask for things. We set really good boundaries, but probably too good of boundaries. We don't let people in very much. So our growth, this is what I have to remind myself, is I can't over-interpret my experiences. So I'm so analytical, I can overanalyze and over-interpret. I need to let people in. I need to rely on others, and I should do things even when I don't feel competent doing them, because that's the big thing. Almost like those who were talking about threes and ones who don't do things. I won't do things because I feel like I don't understand it all yet. I'm not going to do it until I completely understand. In stress, I become more five-ish, focusing on my needs even more and becoming excessively private, protecting myself, not giving into any demands, and I can become really stingy. I don't think I've done this, but fives can become stingy and not wanting to even share information or kind of retorting to like, I'm not going to tell you. Like, I know the answer, but I'm just going to not tell you what I like to share information, so that's not me. And then unhealthily, if I move to 7, fives move to 7 in unhealthy space, and the unhealthy move is kind of not even paying attention to consequences and just living this kind of hedonistic, like, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go and do something crazy. In a healthy way, I can move into 7 space and try to be more easygoing and more fun. Those of you who know me or my family, I'm married to a 7. My dad's a 7. I think that's been helpful to keep me balanced. And my husband, who's a 7, we travel a lot. That is probably not as something I like traveling, but I want to go to understand a culture, not do fun things. Who cares about that? But he brings me that fun part and the adventurous part to me. And I think I bring back to him understanding and thinking things through. So. When I'm in security, 5s move to 8 space, meaning I can incorporate my observations and actually do something. The thing I love about 5s is when we think about something, we think we've done it. Like I can just think about something for a long, long time and I'll feel like, yeah, I'm doing good because I'm thinking about it and not actually do anything about it. So when I move to 8 space and I'm healthy, I actually will set up a conference. I've been thinking about doing an Enneagram conference for like years. It's taken years to finally do it. But I still felt like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm spending lots of time thinking about it. So that's what we got to do. And we can express our anger in productive ways when we move into 8 space and live more balanced. When I was a kid, I actually looked probably more like an 8, so I must have been healthy. I argued with my parents all the time, so I was very confrontational. But so that's moving there. Okay, let's do 6s, and then we'll just do a stand up, break, and then we'll finish up with our last 3. 6 is called the loyalist, and if we haven't gotten to your number yet, I'm so sorry. We're getting there, and hopefully you've at least found yourself in some of these other numbers when you move to them. But 6 is loyalist. Their passion is fear, and again, I don't think anger and fear are not on the 7 deadly sins, but these are another one that was added in, and it's not fear again as in necessarily anxiety, but you'll see how it plays out. That security is so important for 6s. So they fear being without support or guidance, like not having a plan, not having a way to make it through whatever difficult situation. And so that's what they desire, the security. They tend to see the world through worst case scenarios. That's what 6s do. And they are compelled to feel secure by having a plan. And they usually don't just have one plan, they have like plan A, B, and C, like they've got it. And the way they make those plans, again, since they're on the head triad is by kind of seeking information and getting understanding, and that's how they make the plans. That kind of fight, flight, or friends, they say, depending on what your subtype is. So 6s will tell you they scan for danger. They don't necessarily get overwhelmed by danger, but they just cannot help scanning the room for danger or an environment for danger, especially if it's a new place. So I'm not saying that every time they come in their home, they're scanning for danger. But like if it was your first time in this room as a 6, you might have already just naturally thought about if there was a fire, where's the exit, and just kind of thought about a few things like that. Can't help it. It just goes through your mind. You just plan it out. They are feeling secure when they've thought of all the dangers and they have a plan. So in that, not just where's the exit, they'd be like, okay, I think I just take out that route. That's the route I would take. And then they're good. Then they can sit back and read and listen to the rest of this talk. But if they haven't had a chance to do that, they're not going to feel secure. So what's their superpower? They can be prepared for anything, and it reinforces that need to be prepared. So we always talk about like young moms, like your 6s are the moms that are going to have the diaper bag with like everything. You have thought through change of clothes, Tylenol for sick, maybe there's a hungry snack, Band-Aid, antiseptic. I mean, like you've thought through when you go on an outing, if that was you as a mom, everything. And here's the problem, is then when you get in those situations and something happens and you have the thing, your friend goes, oh my word, I don't have a change of clothes. And you're like, well, I do. I'm 6, here you go. You've just reinforced for yourself why you need to have a plan for everything because you've kind of saved the day. So the thing about 6s, and you can usually find a 6 or pick out a 6 is because they're always asking questions. Now, they might not always do it out loud, but if you're in a relationship with somebody that's a 6, they're constantly asking questions to get the information they need to figure out the plan. They'll question their responses. They'll question, and sometimes then they doubt that they really know what they think, and so then they'll seek more questions, and they kind of just go back and forth in this cycle. They struggle with anxiety the most in that 5, 6, 7 triad. So, and they really will push back against quick decisions. And they'll hold their ground if they have come to some security on something. But they don't like quick decisions because, wait a minute, we haven't thought through everything. They are very group oriented. 6s tend to like groups that are like-minded too, because that takes away that stress. So if you're kind of concerned, like, I don't know if I can trust myself. Do I really know this all? And then I find a group that kind of believes the same thing. I'm going to feel such security being in that group because they're all kind of reaffirming to me the thing that I wasn't feeling secure about. So like-minded groups. And again, more involved in group activities. But in that group, they're really concerned about everybody, the common good of that whole group. They also, I didn't realize this until I was reading and reminding myself, 6s tend to be a little bit suspicious of people who reveal too much information. I was trying to think about 6s in my life. I wonder if they are a little bit like, why are you sharing all of that? They fear if they don't have all the information, or they are worried that maybe they're trusting the wrong information, then they won't be prepared. And that would be very scary. So they're gifted at planning and asking questions. Again, being prepared and troubleshooting anything and everything. Again, so I was in a cohort group of that was all the numbers. We met in Dallas 4 weekends in a year to kind of learn all this. And I mean, like the 6s, they were always clarifying information. You know, can I just clarify? Is this? Because it's that kind of trying to make sure they understand and be secure about that. I have other 6s that'll say that they just can't help but visualize like a worst case scenario. So like now all of us do that a little bit, but like if they're with their kids up on a balcony, like they're just automatically seeing that kid go over and kind of having they just constantly see that and they're aware of that. Under stress, they start looking outside of themselves even more. They doubt themselves even more, and they're trying to figure out and validate what they believe. And then sometimes they can start pushing back on people that aren't agreeing with them because they're feeling insecure. But then those what if questions play on a loop when you start getting stressed and you're a 6. What if, what if, what if? And then they move into unhealthy 3 space, which would move into a kind of a workaholic mode because 3s are very productive, very active. And so then they go overboard on their fears and overplan and overwork because they're frightened. But in the healthy side of 3, then they can see what they're able to bring to something, their accomplishments in the group, and then they can trust themselves to succeed. And that would be the best scenario in a time of stress. Insecurity, when things are going well, they move into 9 space. They broaden their views, less anxious, more relaxed. We're going to find out 9s are kind of a chill, harmonious, go with the flow. And they can go into that space when they're feeling secure and feel kind of independent and trust their situation and their environment. Because that is right. We've talked about it even in a church setting. You know, it's the 6. We're going to have a VBS and it's going to be so great. We're going to do all those things. The 6 is the one like, what about safety and security? Who's picking up the kids? Are we registering them? Is there this? And we need that. I mean, because you're right, 6s, if we didn't have you, we would come up with disasters and we would not be thinking things through. But you're right. All those questions, do we have this? Have we thought about that? Those aggressive numbers, those 7 and 8 future planner visionary 3s are like, we don't have time for that. We want to go. And so yes, I'm glad you pointed that out. We do need our 6s. And in fact, organizations, if you have an organization, part of the fun of the Enneagram is thinking through our next hire. Is there something missing? Do we have this? Do we have this? Do we have this? And so organizations without 6s, my guess is, they kind of woo and then crash because they kind of forgot to think about some of those other things. This enthusiast, or some people say Epicurus. I think, did I put that on? No, enthusiast. Because Epicurus, who uses that word anymore? Their passion is gluttony. That does not mean 7s are overeaters. It means, though, in the same idea of what does gluttony mean? It's kind of a overdue, more intensity. Not more more is a 4, like more is better, but in a very external way, it's like 1 is good, 7 is better, like in a experience the world kind of thing, or maybe in eating, maybe like, man, if this chocolate cake is good, I'm gonna have more. But that's the gluttony thing, to fill oneself up with experiences or interesting people or things like that. Their fear is being, now this one's a harder one to understand, because their fear is being deprived or trapped in pain. If you remember at the beginning, we were saying something about like they want to avoid being kind of stuck in this eternal pain, boredom situation. And so that's why for 7s, you're going to get a sense that having options and being spontaneous is so important, because they don't want to get stuck. So their desire then, not just to avoid pain, but then experiencing so many things and be happy and positive. That's how they go about their lives. So they see the world ripe with opportunities and experiences. And they want to feed that desire for new and more and stuff like that. So, and they have the most energy of any of the numbers. Some people say they have monkey brains, because they think faster than the rest of us. They've got all these ideas. They're just constantly, got lots of energy. And I mean, my husband is like that. I mean, he's an introvert, so you guys may not know that because he's not out in public doing all of this stuff. But he has energy. When he puts his mind to doing something, he just is always, let's do something else. Let's do more. Let's when it has to do with something he wants, like travel or an experience. But so they're really great at brainstorming lots of different directions. But here's what's interesting. It's still very self-referencing. So as he's thinking through all of these things, or my dad is a 7, all these things, there's still a sense of themselves in the midst of that. How do I fit in? How can I go through this experience? How can I do all these things? Without even trying, again, they're trying to experience as much as possible and feel alive. It's really important. And that's why they're so positive. I put their superpower really is reframing. They can take any situation and make it into a positive one. And they can anticipate and plan their best future. They say that 7s, and Eric would say the same, and I don't know if any other 7s, but if you ask them to visualize something in the future, like picture yourself, blah, 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 here, this, they can do it. Like they have that ability, and they can actually in their mind be there and be experiencing that. And in fact, they're so good at that, those who are 7s, and they're so future oriented, that like, for instance, in our family, if it's traveling, my husband can plan a trip. He loves planning a trip, and he will go through the entire trip in his head, basically. He'll look at everything. He'll look at Google Maps, like the roads we're driving, where we're staying, and he will live it all out up here and love it. Now, you can imagine that means that sometimes the actual vacation is like, dud. Because when you're like up here, it's like perfect. And everything goes well. And so 7s actually have to be challenged at not like, being disappointed with when real life happens. And it's not exactly what you envisioned or planned. You can imagine then, like especially during COVID, when 7s could not plan and future go, it was tough. Because then that's like, how am I going to make it if I can't be thinking of something in the future and planning and putting all that effort in the future? So they have the ability to see the things they want instead of the way they were or are. So that's when they reframe. And when they reframe things, it is in such a positive light that they can actually have a different memory of something in the past because they've reframed it and be like, what do you mean? It was an okay thing. Future plans can take precedence over what's happening today. So they really would value the future. And again, options. Do not tell them they are limited. My dad is essentially a 7. I can remember as a kid, every vacation, I mean, it was always like, we already had plans to be like, what about this? He's always throwing out like, well, we're in wherever Northwest, you want to go to Crater Lake? We could just drive there right now, 3 hours, it'd be fun. We could do this. I mean, there's always options. Same way with restaurants. Options. He doesn't want to be confined. The other thing about the positivity, and I really mean they can reframe anything. If they can't, that's when true pain comes, and that's actually a growth moment for them if they'll allow themselves to get to a spot where they can't reframe. But my parents, when they were building the house I live in now, this would have been 12 years ago, their house was in the middle of being built and it burned down. And during the process, so they weren't living there. And I was living in Kansas City at the time, heard the news that it was on fire, came out. I mean, it wasn't done yet, but it was the whole thing was on fire. And as all the fire departments are there, we're standing out, it was winter in the snow. My dad's literally like, well, we can make lemonade out of these lemons. I knew that those holes were a little bit too narrow. So this time when we build it, we're gonna go out another 6 inches on these hallways. I mean, like, completely like no pain, no sadness at the months of that have gone into building and the cost. I know that the people were probably going to sue people and all this mess because it was a construction error that caused the fire. But still, like, it was all like, you would have thought it was his birthday. Like, excellent! I can't wait to build the house that we've always wanted. Like, I wanted this to burn. I mean, we even teased him. We're like, did you set this on fire? We're so happy. My mom, as you know, who's a 1, you can imagine. That is not the reaction she needed in that moment. And so the Enneagram has helped them. I mean, when they travel, you know, my mom wants to get to the airport 2 hours early, make sure all the things. And so now she gets on the plane, and then my dad comes running in. Like, he's going to go shop and have some restaurants, and then I'm not going to sit on the plane till the very last minute. But they can understand each other. And when their flights get canceled, my mom tries to go like, okay, it's okay. My dad's like, yes, what new thing can we do? That's a 7. And if you're 7s, you probably are like, yep, that's how I see the world. So, but again, beneath this fun-loving, all the adventures and options and visions and humor, because that's the other thing is, if it starts getting a little deep, 7s are going to throw out a little joke. They're going to keep it a little light. I can tell when there's actually something bothering Eric sometimes because he'll be throwing out little jokes to kind of, and I'm like, that's not really appropriate. And it's oftentimes when it's not appropriate. Like, if you're all sad or talking about something tragic, abuse or something, he's like, what? I'm like, throw that out there. I'm like, but it's because he started to feel something sad, and that's uncomfortable, so let's lighten up the mood. So they do it for that reason. Okay, so behind all that, again, is they don't want to be stuck with overwhelming sadness or failure or something that is unhappy. And so for 7, the growth is being present now. Finishing projects, that's the other thing, 7s. Something sounds fun and they'll start a project, but finishing it, like, there's more fun things to do. So getting a 7 to actually finish the project instead of moving on to the next thing is hard sometimes. Under stress, well, they tend to ignore stress. They're not stressed. We're just going to keep moving and doing all this stuff. But what happens is they become more avoidant of pain. And when they move, 7s make this move, I think, quite readily into their 1 space. At least my husband does. When he's stressed. And that unhealthy side of 1, they would take themselves too seriously. They become hypercritical of others and kind of judgmental when they're under stress, which is weird. If you're married or know a 7, you're like, why are you all of a sudden like coming down with these hard kind of, this is how it should be. Now, and again, when I know Eric is stressed, he'll come in and he'll like see a cabinet in our house and he'll say it's so funny because he'll be like, oh, this is so disorganized. And I'm like, take it out. He'll start reorganizing just this one thing. Well, he's stressed and he's exerting his stress of control and oneness in that space. And then we all go, you've had a rough week, we'll let you organize that all you want, and know that you're stressed. So, on the healthy side of 1, when we want them to be in their healthy 1 space, they can get that kind of organizational 1, like this needs to get done, and they can actually tackle unfinished projects. And I like this, be more concerned with quality over quantity, because sometimes it's like, I just want to experience all this stuff, and then they find that. And that energy actually helps them slow down and center, being a little bit more concerned about what's going on and with others. Insecurity, and this is why Eric and I connect, I go to 7 and he comes to 5, is 7s become self-reflective and self-aware, and they have that silence and solitude, and they're able to have a balance beside just being stimulated and going through all these things and actually resting, reinvigorating, and withdrawing. So become objective and thoughtful, and it's a nice move there. So okay, let's go on to Challenger, because we're coming up on our time, and I want to get through both numbers. So I don't. Nines, by the way, their biggest fear is being overlooked and like their presence doesn't matter. So we have to get to 9, okay? Even if we go over a few minutes, we're not skipping you, I promise. You're already like, oh, they're just gonna be done with 9s and be like, nah, we're done. Okay, 8, challengers. So their passion or sin is lust. Again, these aren't perverted people out there lusting after it. Lust meaning passion and zeal for life. 8s just have this passion for life and this intensity they bring. And their fear is actually being harmed or controlled by others. And so, in order to protect themselves, they try to not be controlled. They're going to avoid that. And so they kind of show a more powerful kind of against side so that you can't take control of them and control things. So they see the world naturally when they just come in. We talked about this when you come into a room. 8s are going to see that room just naturally and kind of power struggles and kind of their own agenda. And I love this about 8s. They are compelled in some ways to kind of push the boundaries, push them a little bit, and partly in authority a little bit because they don't want to be seen as weak for sure. And then it allows them to move forward. If they can kind of test this all out and go, okay, now I can move forward with the right path, which is whatever it is that they need to get done. They see the world actually very black and white. Ones I would say see the world black and white as too, but so do 8s. But for 8s, it's about kind of who has power and who's submissive. If you're an 8, you're just aware. Strong, weak. That person's strong, that person's weak. Like you just aware of that. And without even trying, this is now since we're in the gut triad, their emotion that they're most connected with is anger. And it does. They're aware of it. It seems strong to them. But they also will tell you they can't not express their anger when there is anger to be expressed. They have also, so I said that 7s have a lot of energy, but 8s also have a lot of energy. And their focus is really getting things done. They see the world in extremes. That's that black and white. They don't need to be in charge. So I'm not saying that if you're an 8, you're always in charge of things. However, if there's a void, like if there's a vacuum and somebody isn't in charge, an 8 will naturally just go ahead and take charge. Not because they have to, but they'll help with that structure. This is the other number like 4s that sometimes people will say you're too much. And that's that intensity and passion that they bring to things. Here's the thing about 8s. They do not like hidden messages or indecisive or passive aggressiveness. They speak directly and they want you to respond to them directly. They do not like to try to figure out what you're saying. Yes?
So my sister is
Uh-huh.
an 8.
Okay.
Strong 8.
Yeah.
When she was 7, she was upset at being left out of my birthday party.
Okay.
So she brought her pocket constitution
What?
to my mom and told her about age discrimination.
No way.
Really, she should be a part of things going on.
Wow. Wow. This is a good story of an 8. Like she really had a pocket constitution. Okay. Well, there we go. Black and white, and this is how it should be done, and this is unfair, really, right? I love it. So that sense of not just right and wrong, but specifically for 8s, that awareness is also in like the underdog. Does that make sense? Like 8s are going to go to bat for people that have been left out, whether that's themselves or somebody else. But they are very aware of, I want to help this person get and do what is fair. And there is respect for people that are strong. And so that sense of avoiding kind of vulnerability or not wanting to be controlled means I can't stress enough that kind of the confrontation or directness or kind of testing you That's what that's about. So 8s, when they call him the challenger because, and I have a brother-in-law that's an 8, I would always misinterpret his enjoyment of conflict. Like, he was not afraid, and he would kind of push, and he'd like kind of bring some stuff up, and he would just be direct, and sometimes he would actually push a little bit where I would kind of be like, oh no, he doesn't like me. He's being so confrontational. What is going on? Why is he challenging everything? He's just testing and having fun, and it actually means he loves me. If the 8 in your life knows that you can go to bat with them, they're going to push you even more, and they enjoy it. Come on, meet them. Be a strong power. Kind of be, and in fact, the thing that they don't want is for you to be like, oh, I don't want to do that. Because then that to them, it's like, weak. Can't trust you. Because that's what that weakness means is, I can't rely on you, and I can't trust you, so you're done. 8s, when they have, the reason they're so busy and they have a path, it's like, we're on a path. And that's just how they're seeing the world. This has to get done. And I'm going to do it. And here we go. And you can join me, but if you're not going to join me, watch out. Because out of the way, because we're going to get this done. And that's not because they don't like you. It's just because we got to get this done. And that's the thing I love about 8s, but we misinterpret about 8s is then when there's anger, when something doesn't go right or they're frustrated or whatever, they need to let you know. That they just feel like, I have got to let you know. I have to tell you about this anger or where I'm disappointed. But guess what? Then it's over with. They're not going to hold a grudge. Once they've expressed that anger, we can move on. And the rest of the world has to understand that they just need to express it, and then we're good, and we're back to normal. So don't take it personally, kind of, even though we do take it personally. And so that's the thing about 8s is let them express it. I mean, remind them, maybe express it nicely or whatever. But once they've expressed it, we're back to normal. So under stress. Under growth. What they need to do, stop trying to force and control your life and realize how your anger affects others. Sometimes I think 8s don't realize, they don't even say they're angry. They're like, that wasn't angry. I was just letting you know, or I was being direct. So sometimes they have to be aware that their anger does affect the rest of us that aren't used to that anger. And then to reflect, to do more reflection. 8s are driven by an intensity and control, but under stress, they begin to push everything in their lives, kind of dynamically kind of dominating and standing their ground, which can lead to paranoia of others, like, oh, they're not being loyal to me, or they're being dishonest. They kind of got covered. The thing that 8s will tell you is the one thing you never want to do to an 8 is lie. Lying is the worst. Because how can they ever trust you again? And it's about power and weakness. So 8s will tell you stories about when they were, if somebody lied, it's like, I can't tolerate that. In stress, unhealthily, they move into 5 space and they can become isolated and withdrawn. So if you know 8s that kind of pull back into isolation and withdrawing, it might be because they're under stress and they just aren't knowing how to deal with that. And so in that, and that can be an isolating feeling for the 8s, in that anger too, and like, oh. But choosing the high side of 5, it's still important for 8s to withdraw. However, that withdrawal in a healthy way should be to look at things from different perspectives, reorganize your thoughts, slow down, and then decide what action to take. So that's the healthy side. Insecurity, 8s actually move to 2s, which is a weird, same way vice versa, but they feel safe in their relationships, they sense the needs of others, and they have all that energy, and they can help. They get so much done. They step into our lives, and they channel all of that energy into these supportive relationships, and then they can be vulnerable and let you know and show affection and be with people more consciously. So those are the 8s. Advocates. I just want to mention again, 8s, we need 8s not just for the ability to get stuff done. They are not bullies. They actually care about the bullies. And they want justice for the bullies. Does that make sense? Like, if not for the bullies, for those who are being bullied. That's not. They see people that are on the outskirts of society or who've been neglected, and they are the ones that advocate and go to bat for those people. And so we don't, all that anger and passion, it's usually geared towards that. And that's the thing they're getting frustrated and passionate about, is somebody else is getting mistreated, or something isn't, it's not the just thing to do. And so just keep that in mind too. Okay, last but not least. I'm sorry we're over 12, but I just stick with this. We don't want our nines to feel lost and left out. That's right. So hang in there. We'll go through it. And I saved the best for last, nines. No, there's no best number. We're all our numbers. But the reason 9 sits on the top of the Enneagram, they say, is because they have the ability, more than any other number, to kind of understand all the numbers. We call them the peacemaker. And their passion or sin is sloth. And I know that seems like, what? Why sloth? But that just means they don't want to be affected by life. So it's not lazy. It's that, think of a sloth. I'm going to disregard what's going on the outside and on the inside, so that I can just be kind of in peace and unified. That's where that comes from. Their fear, this sounds strange, is kind of loss of connection or fragmentation. That sounds odd, but it's a fear of kind of rocking the boat, a fear of disrupting things or fragmenting. And so their desire then, that's why we call them the peacemaker, is to be at peace, to be unified, to be calm and connected, both on the outside and on the inside. This is a unique number because they're doing both, out and inner, at the same time. So they want to keep out anything that would steal that peace from them, but also keep in anything that could cause trouble to the rest of us. See, so keeping things out, but also keeping things in, so you don't know, because they don't want to rock the boat. They can see the world through the lens of all the numbers. That's their superpower. Now, they're anti-conflict. They don't want to cause friction or conflict ever, so making decisions can be excruciating for 9s. And it's not even that they always, it's because sometimes it's they don't know what they want, but sometimes they're just not interested enough to go through the effort of trying to find out what it is that they do want. They just don't want to be bothered. So they can be incredibly busy. 9s, in fact, I think a lot of 9s in my life are very busy people, but they get busy doing non-essential things. Meaning, the thing with that harmony, so you can just picture it. They're trying to be at harmony with the world and unaffected, so inwardly. So guess what happens? You get a list of things, and everything is equal to them. I don't know which one is more important or not, because it's all kind of equal, because that's how they're living their lives. So if a 9, you give them a list, let's say, here's what, or they in their mind, they're like, this is what I need to do today, and maybe let's say one of them's mowing the lawn, and one of them's doing this. You might go outside to get the paper before you mow the lawn, and you go, oh, there's a sale today on this. So now guess what? Off to the store to do that. And then you go pick up that. And then you on your way home, you see, oh, so-and-so's doing this. And so you do this. And so meanwhile, now it's 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. And you're like, that yard hasn't gotten mowed. You were busy all day long. You were just like watching TV. You're busy. But it was kind of like, I don't know what's more important. This is good. This is good. This is good. And so you go through your life like that. They're very easygoing and pleasant to be with. I love all the numbers, but I love my 9s because they're just so easy to be. I don't have to worry. I mean, they're just going to be pleasant, and they're the least controlling of all the types. They're just they merge and go with whatever the group wants or whatever you want. They can obsess over decisions, sometimes becoming stubborn about choosing, but usually that stubbornness comes out too, because once they've actually made a decision, I don't want to change. So if they care enough about finally making that decision, you better not try to change their mind, because they're going to be stubborn about that. Their superpower, again, it's this: they find their value in doing and being connected and unified and in peace with their world. So therefore, they merge and mediate so well. That's why this says, I think, in the friend, does it say good listener? Somewhere it says that. 9s are the best listeners. They will listen, and they'll sometimes they'll offer advice, sometimes they'll just listen. I mean, they're just great, and they can understand where you're coming from because they understand all the numbers. So remember, I said there's two numbers that kind of are like, I see myself in everything. I think 4s a little bit because they're like, I understand all this and I'm emotive and I can connect. But 9s also can understand. They're like, in fact, most times when people can't figure out what number, we've gone through the whole thing and they don't know what they are, it's usually they're 9. And then they're just identifying with all the other numbers. So, let's see. Beneath the surface of this peaceful, let's just go along with whatever is this belief that they don't matter. And that's why they're not asserting their opinions or desires. They don't want to stand out. And the reason they don't want to stand out is because they think it's wrong to be more valuable than anyone else. I mean, just think about it. Here's this, everything's unified. I'm not better than anybody else. I don't want to stand out. That doesn't mean that they don't do good jobs at things, but just don't recognize them. I don't know if there's 9s in the room. My daughter's a 9. She does not want to be singled out, ever. She loves theater, drama, all that stuff, and she wants to do a great job and loves doing all of that, but she doesn't want somebody to say something about her specifically that would single her out from everybody else. And she's made it very clear to us as parents not to do that. So within this kind of unified harmony, there's that kind of simmering thing of, oh, it doesn't matter, no, I don't care, whatever you want to do. Sometimes there is a feeling of what does matter and what they want to do. They don't want to rock the boat. So there can be a little bit of passive-aggressive, like, nobody listened to me, they didn't ask me where I wanted to go, and then that can come out. And then sometimes what happens with 9s is then they just explode. So they have a really good ability to remember things. All the times people didn't listen to them and didn't ask their opinion, and they kind of chain them all together. And then it finally gets to be too much, and guess what? You get to hear about all the times that nobody ever listened to them, and this one time you didn't do what I said, and all this stuff, and you just chain them all together. And usually that thing you explode on is not even a big, it's just like it's just like the final straw of being overlooked, and then it all comes out. So 9s aren't always just peaceful. They do have some moments of anger at times. They're great. I think 9s probably are great counselors. They're great at mediating and things like that because they listen and they'll take in your story and they'll accept you. They'll accept all what you say. They're not going to judge you. They're just going to accept it all. So what 9s need to do is stop trying to be resisted or resist being affected by your experiences. It's okay for things to affect you. And it's okay to achieve, 9s. It's okay to find ways that we can celebrate you and for you to stand out. And then 9s have to find ways to be heard and assertive. When 9s are under stress, they disengage, even more reactive to others' behaviors. They will give themselves that permission to be angry, and it's usually over small things. A lot of 9s will say that they feel the freedom to, when they're stressed, they show their anger a lot when they're driving, because they can be mad at other people without having the consequences of actually being in conflict. Because you're privately in your car going, I can't believe that. And you're expressing your anger, but it's safe to express their anger. Does that make sense? So some 9s say that that's what happens when they start getting stressed. They can get more stubborn than usual. And the thing that 9s could do is they can numb them, because they're trying not to be, affected by the world. When they get stressed, they can try to numb out a lot more. 9s will tell you they usually know how to numb out, either binge on Netflix or sleep or eat or something. There's something that they can do that they know kind of quiets that down. Shopping, whatever. Now, if they move further into stress, they can get into that 6th space and they can lose that optimism and faith and begin planning for the most terrible, irrational thing. And it is irrational. When my daughter goes to 6th space, she's like, what? Like, she auditioned for something and, messed up the audition, and she came home and was like, I've never, my whole life is ruined. I will never be in another play, and now I won't do this. And it's goes to 6 worst case scenario in a moment. And we call it catastrophizing, because I'm like, this isn't even rational. But that is where 9s can go when they are overstressed. So if you have 9s in your life that start just freaking out, you're like, what in the world? That is not true. Okay, so what's the high side of 6, though? If they're healthy and in stress, what they can do is they can take some of the anxiety and worry that's actually good. Remember, 9s are like, nothing's bothering me. Sometimes it's good to have a little anxiety and worry. I don't mean to pick on my daughter, but sometimes she'll say these things as a 9, like, oh, we were driving 99 miles an hour in my car. And I'm like, you have to have some worry and some concern about some things, okay? Like there's a little bit of that. So, because 9s are like, chill, nothing, doesn't matter. So it's good to go to 6 and find some of that anxiety and worry that's good and push yourself into action to do and make a plan and have some energy to decide things and merge less. Insecurity, 9s create a peaceful environment, not just for themselves. This is how 9s move into free space, but with others as well. So a lot of 9s, when they're in their free space, they're self-confident. They're developing their own skills. They're using their own gifts and talents to take control. So you'll see those 9s succeeding and achieving and doing those things in a more unified way. So, any 9s want to say anything before we wrap up here? Again, depending on, this is what's tricky about 9s, depending on those, we're not going into subtypes today, but again, if you're a self-preservation 9, meaning it's about you're going to be in your routines, you like routines, and that's where you find this kind of sense of not being affected by the world. If you're a social 9, you're going to be very busy and you're a lot more extroverted. Out there, being a part of the group, unified, and that kind of sense, and very busy. If you're a relational 9, you tend to merge with your other a lot and kind of take on whatever is important to them, that becomes important to you. So do you see how it looks differently based on your subtype? So that's how you can have, all the numbers have that. We'll do that at another time. But, okay, guys, the only other thing I'm going to say is I'm not going to talk about more, but look at that. Veggie-all, pie, plate, salad. In terms of the complexity of the Enneagram, we are just at the surface. We just hit all the numbers. There is so much more and so much deeper. So who knows, maybe in the spring we'll do, now that we've had an intro session and there might be people in the community that want to go deeper, we can talk more about the conflict, how we manage things, the triads, and of course the subtypes we were just mentioning. The only other thing I want to say, some people have said, like, what do I want to do if I want to learn more? In terms of books, I highly recommend Suzanne Stabile's and Ian Crom have a book. There's 3 in the series. The first one is called The Road Back to You. Suzanne Stabile is her name. The Road Back to You. The second one is called The Path Between Us. That's more relational. And then the third one is called Journey Towards Wholeness, and that is like deeper work, if that makes sense. So you start with one and go through them. She does a great job. Podcasts, listen up. I'm sure you guys have them. Typology is one by Ian Cron. Suzanne's one is called The Enneagram Journey. Your Enneagram Coach, is that one you mentioned? Did you mention Your Enneagram Coach? It's by Beth and Jeff McCord. And then a lady named Annie Downs in the summer always does one called Ennea Summer. Those are all, just type in on your Google and listen. My best advice is listen.